Welcome to the next installment of my video lecture series in economics. And in this particular video lecture, I'm going to be taking a look at comparative advantage and the gains from trade. In particular, we're going to be taking a look at two individuals who produce two items and how it's possible for each to specialize in the commodity that they have the comparative advantage, engage in trade, and for both parties to be better off because of that. So if you take a look here, we have what is referred to in your textbook as the theory of comparative advantage, and it states that Ricardo's theory that specialization in free trade will benefit all parties, even those that may not be absolutely more efficient producers. So you might want to reference my other video that distinguishes between or compares absolute and comparative advantage if you haven't watched that already as a precursor to this particular video. So in this particular graph here, we have a production possibilities frontier for Curly and for Mo. And in looking at this, we can see that Curly has the absolute advantage in the production of both coconuts and in the production of fish per day. That is, Curly can outproduce Mo in either commodity. So according to Ricardo, this does not matter. What matters is what is the comparative advantage of an individual. And from that video I talked about previously, which compared absolute and comparative advantage, we showed that Mo has the comparative advantage in coconut production. So that's represented by the fact that Mo is producing nothing but coconuts and no fish, so he's represented at this point here. And Curly has the comparative advantage in fish production, so therefore he is allocating all of his time to catching fish, and he can catch 18 fish in a day, and is producing 0 coconuts. Again, you might want to reference that video that compares absolute and comparative advantage, and in that we actually calculate and determine who has a comparative advantage using the same exact data. So let's take a look at how, if individuals specialize in what they have the comparative advantage and engage in trade, how they both can be made better off. So let's assume that Mo and Curly decide that they are going to trade 4 coconuts for 5 fish, and let's see what that does to the consumption that's available to them, or the amount of coconuts and the amount of fish that are available for them to consume. So if Mo spends all of his time collecting coconuts, he can collect 10 coconuts. He could trade 6 of them to Curly and have 6 coconuts remaining, and he will receive 5 fish in exchange for those 4 coconuts. So he will be consuming 5 fish. So you can see here that if we take a look at this, that the consumption point that that Mo now has is external to the original production possibilities frontier for Mo. What that means is that by specializing in what Mo has comparative advantage and engaging in trade with Curly, Mo is able to consume more than he would have been able to had he been self-sufficient, that is, produced coconuts and fish on his own. So realize that with this term of trade, Mo is actually made better off. He can consume more when engaging in specialization and trade than he would have been capable of if he was self-sufficient. He would have had to produce and consume along the points of this production possibilities frontier. And since this point here is external to it, Mo is able to consume more than he would have been able to if he had been self-sufficient. And remember, in economics, we talk about mutually beneficial exchanges occurring. So we have to determine whether or not Curly is made better off by this. So realize that Curly is going to be spending his time catching fish, and he can catch 18 fish in a day. So he's going to trade 5 to Mo, and have 13 fish left over, and he's going to receive 4 coconuts in return. Again, we see that consumption point is external to Curly's production possibilities frontier. That means that Curly is going to be able to consume more if he engages in specialization and trades with Mo than he would have if he had been self-sufficient. He would have had to consume along any of the points of this PPF. So we can see this new point is external to the PPF. Therefore, Curly is better off by engaging in specialization and trade at this term of trade. All right? So one thing I want you to realize, it's not always guaranteed that if there's specialization and trade that occurs, that both parties will be better off. It's dependent upon the term of trade that is agreed upon by the two parties. So with this term of trade, you can see that both parties are made better off, that they both can consume more than that would have been possible if they had just been self-sufficient. Let me put up another term of trade here to show you what I mean, that the benefits depend upon what the term of trade is. So I changed this. Now they've agreed to exchange 4 coconuts for 6 fish. So again, Mo is producing 10 coconuts a day. He agrees to trade 4, which leaves him 6 coconuts left over, and he receives 6 fish in return. And as you can see, Mo is still better off. His consumption at this point here of 6 and 6, 6 coconuts and 6 fish, is external to the PPF, his PPF. So he would have only been able to consume what he produced, which is along this PPF. So his consumption is greater by engaging in specialization and trade than it would have been if he was self-sufficient. Let's use this term of trade to see if Curly is made better off. So Curly is going to trade 6 fish from his 18 fish that he has caught during a day, which will leave him with 12 fish, and he will get 4 coconuts in return. So what do you notice here? You notice that Curly is right back on the PPF, his PPF. So there is no benefit to Curly in engaging in specialization and trade and agreeing to these terms of trade. He will be just brought back to his original PPF, so there is no benefit to Curly of doing that. So the reason I did this last particular example is just to illustrate to you the importance of the term of trade, that the term of trade has to be appropriate in order for specialization and trade to benefit both parties.